Right at the moment we're at Carthage Jail. Go over there by Joseph Smith.
Would you like to be in that picture with them?
All right.
There you go, Grant.
I just don't get that to go.
It's going.
I must not be.
It's going,
Is it
Mom.
going?
Yeah, it's going. I can see it turning. It's going. Get that you got.
Dad.
Let's take a picture. Yeah, Mom?
Front doors, you park on the street and one. And here we have two reliefs, both taken from original bronze at the church on April 6, 1830. Are you folks here for a tour?
No, we've already.
Oh, you've already done it.
But we didn't speak up to the.
We had friends, relatives, and neighbors who were assembled up at Fayette, New York, in a little log home. And man on his right is Hiram. Hiram and Joseph were two of the original 6 men who organized the church on that day. I love that painting. It's beautiful. Now the picture on the end here shows Joseph as he preaches the gospel up at Nauvoo. As you recall, Joseph had purchased several thousand acres from Isaac Gowan, a land speculator, and they did a lot of draining of that area to make it habitable. In 7 years, they built 2,500 homes that they abandoned in 1846. And Joseph, of course, loved to speak in the out-of-doors and did so most of his life, or the few years that he was there. Most of his speaking engagements were outdoor, no problem. And as he passed the temple, he said to them, "I feel like a lamb going to the slaughter, but I'm as calm as a summer's morn." The building was just partially completed, and after he was killed 3 days later, it was about 2 years later until it was completely finished and dedicated by Orson Hyde on April 30th, 1846. The movie we'd like to show you. The movie was made in Nauvoo.
And this was the jailer's living room.
It wasn't called that in 1844. No, the jail was used for 25 years after Joseph and Hiram were both dead. And Hiram was killed right here by the door, and Joseph was killed over there by the window. John Cannon was injured on there by the bed, and the blood stain should be right down here. They could not prove whose blood it was, so they took it up 4 years ago.
This is coming down the road heading towards Nauvoo, looking across the Mississippi River, where Nauvoo sits on the edge of it.
Where do we start?
nobody's going to take the attention from him.
Monticello, Utah, and we welcome you. Where are you people from?
Hi.
Rigby. Well, you from a good
We
state.
went up to New York.
You did?
Down when we came back.
Well, good. What did you do in New York in Nauvoo? Now, the Scovilles had 8 children, and 4 of them lived to maturity. Mrs. Scoville passed away here in Nauvoo in childbirth in the spring, early spring of 1846. What they do is soak the lid in water overnight, getting it waterlogged and fireproof. They start a fire in on the bricks and keep this going, put the lid in at an angle with the chimney, and then burn that for 3 hours, getting your bricks very hot. After the 3-hour period of time, they scoop all of the ashes out a trap door at the back, and then sprinkle cornmeal all over your bricks. Cornmeal all over your paddle, put your little loaf of bread on your paddle here, and then gently load the oven. And this type of an oven will bake about 9 loaves of bread. After the oven is loaded, you put your lid back in place, this time putting it straight up and down, bypassing the chimney part that's in the front. The little loaves of bread bake just under an hour, but the oven stays hot for 3 full hours. So as soon as they would take the bread from the oven, they would put in your cookies and cakes or other items that they would have to bake during this time, utilizing all of that heat that's in the oven. They had a full confectioner store here at that time, so they would prepare them over the open hearth fire that they had. Now, the other items that you see here in the bakery are items that would be typical in a bakery of that period. Your spice cabinets here, and this on the wall, your earthen pitcher and your trestle table are all over 200 years old. And your cookie cutters probably made in the tin shop down the street, making all sizes and shapes, making it fun for the children to have their cookies during that day, and the same as we have ours today.
Because they began leaving in the Exodus to the west.
You promised me you'd drive me to the dressmaker.
But you won't have time to have that dress made now, Sarah. We're going to have to leave sooner than we thought.
Well, sooner than May. When? How much sooner?
The first part of it. We got to leave by the first part of February.
First part of February? That's less than 10 days. Well, why? Why do we have to leave then?
I'm afraid if we don't leave, there'll be a civil war.
Hey, who wants us to go?
The government.
Oh, we promised we wouldn't fight, that we would only use our arms to defend ourselves.
Well, if we don't leave soon, they'll send in the militia and they'll take away our weapons, and then we'll be at the mercy of the law.
Oh, but we'd never go against the government.
Of course. We love this country. We know that Columbus and the men who founded the Constitution were inspired of God. This is God's country. This is the promised land. We wouldn't go against the government. But they don't know.
Oh, I don't understand this law.
We can't stay here, so we better decide what we're going to do.
We don't die of pneumonia.
We'll bundle up. We'll build fires at night.
In 20-degree below zero weather. And what about all the babies that are soon to be born?
They will be born in the White House.
I guess you'll expect me to take them back in that way then, when it's 30 below, too.
No, we can postpone that until we get out there.
That does it. If you think I'm going to ride clear to the Rocky Mountains with you without you taking a nap,
I'll take a shower.
oh,
In the spring rain. your room that will fit in that chest.
Oh, will my rosewood bed fit in that chest?
You take your feather tick, and that's about it.
Oh, I don't know what I'm worrying about this for. I'm not going anyway.
Now, we need to put together a box of medicines and remedies.
Well, why? We'd all be dead before we could use them.
And I want you to pack your ginger and spices. You can't get that stuff out there, you
I'm
know.
out of ginger.
Well, buy some.
Well, why? I'm not going to. You couldn't even make yourself a cup of ginger tea.
That's why I'd have to take you, Sarah. Nothing like a good hot cup of ginger tea to warm a man up. Now, I'll build a crate for the chickens, and I'll buy a rooster.
He won't want to go any more than I do.
Nonsense. With all those hens to keep him company, he'll be crowing all the way.
I won't be crowing.
And we need to each take 2 cows, 3 sheep, the pig.
Well, this is one sheep that won't be full.
Sarah, don't you believe the gospel of Jesus Christ is true?
Well, of course I do. But I can believe it's true just as well right here in front of that nice warm fire as I can out there freezing to death in the wagon.
Sounds to me like I married a bear with a bird.
Well, you're right. And I'll fly with when spring comes.
You wait until then, Sarah. Your wings will be clipped, and you won't fly at all. Now, should we have the corn ground into meal here, or should we wait until we get out there?
Well, how are we going to grind it out here? Squish it between 2 stones.
Yes, millstones. Just because we're going to a new land doesn't mean that we're leaving our brains behind. You give us 1 year. 1 year in the West, and we'll build a city larger and just as beautiful as Nauvoo.
Beautiful snow. Without trees or flowers or fruit. I hear all they have out there is out west is sagebrush. Whatever that is.
We'll take along some tree saplings,
In the middle of the winter,
pick them up in the Iowa Territory in the spring.
I'll tell you what. When those trees are big enough to shade me, I'll decide to go.
Sarah, when we left Ohio, you didn't complain. You didn't grumble too much.
No.
And when we were driven out of Missouri, you didn't.
No.
But now I guess you're just getting too old to cope.
Too old or cold? Who was it who put the fire out when those men set our haystacks afire? Me. And who was it who rounded up all those pigs and put them back in the pen when those boys turned them loose and drove them down the river? Me. And who was it? Just who was it who drove our team clear across Missouri? It was me. Too old to cope. Oh, you put that chest in the wagon and I'll start to pack.
I knew you'd go.
Oh, of course.
Cut it off about a half to 3/4 of an inch short. Just a minute, I'll tell you why they cut it off that short. Then they took that piece they cut off, put it in a pinch rope like this one right here. This one also came from the chute collection in Utah. It's been here, it was here 150 years ago. But they put it in there, they rolled it to one end, tightened these screws down as tight as they could get. Then they rolled it back to the other, tightened those screws down again as tight as they could get. They kept going back and forth from end to end and tightening those screws down until they come out with a circle like this one right here. They didn't have modern welding equipment like we have today, so they had to take it back into the forge and heat these ends up real hot. They had to get those hot so that that metal would flow, and that old blacksmith knew just exactly how hot to get it so that that would flow when he took a big hammer and pounded that together, and that's what they call a forge weld. Here's one right here on this rim right here. Right there. See, that's just a little bit rougher than the rest of it, but not too much rougher. But that is the strongest part of the whole rim now, where that was welded together. Yours is really short. They had to expand that, so they had to heat it up real hot. They got it real hot, and they took 2 or 3 pair of these prongs right here, set that on that wooden part of the wheel. But to keep that hot metal from burning that wood, they took a bucket of cold water and poured it on there, And as they poured that cold water on there, besides keeping the wood from burning, it started to cool that metal down. As that metal started to cool down, it started to shrink back up, and it just tightened right around this wooden part of the wheel. Tied that whole wheel together, and